In this lesson, we are going to learn how to make our game responsive so that it can fit on a wide range of screen sizes, screen resolutions, and especially aspect ratios. We can see this in effect in our current game here, where we've got some scrolling in place. Now we're using CSS so that it stretches the canvas so that it fills horizontally, but we still have this vertical issue, and it's going to be more pronounced on the wide range of mobile devices. So let's go ahead and dive into the code and see how we can fix this. The first thing we want to do is address our CSS here. Now currently we're scaling with CSS, which is fine depending on your needs, but if we want a game that seamlessly scales across all types of mobile devices, we're going to have to use JavaScript in this case. So let's go ahead and get rid of this width 100%. That's no longer needed. And let's go ahead and take a look at the JavaScript here. So we currently set this default width and height that again was scaled by the CSS. But now let's go ahead and change this to use the client's width and height. So we've got document.body.clientWidth, and we've got document.body.clientHeight. Okay, so that's now going to scale our canvas, our stage, the renderer, to the size of the screen. However, we need to do more than that for this to work correctly. So the next thing we need to do is we need to determine the scale to use for all elements. So the way that we're going to make this seamlessly work is we're actually going to scale all of the elements with relation to that default 1920 by 1080. So let's go ahead and set up a scale variable here, and we'll set that default to the width divided by 1920. Now, obviously, depending on the device orientation or its aspect ratio, this won't always work. So let's go ahead and check that we are filling the height as well. And so if that scaled height is less than the height of the device, then we're going to go ahead and do it this way. You know, pretty simplistic way of doing it, but it should work fairly well. Okay, so that sets up our scale. The next thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and begin scaling all of our different elements, beginning with the background here. So currently, the background has no width and height set. It's using just the default width and height of the texture. So let's go ahead and change that. Background.width. And let's go ahead and round these numbers so that we get nice, smooth width and height values. So all we have to do is this _scale times 1920, which is the width of the background, and then background.height, same deal, math.round, and then we take our scale times 1080. Okay, so that's going to scale our background. Let's go ahead and see what we've got now. Go ahead and reload our game. Okay, as you can see, we have no more scrolling. The background is now scaling to the size of our screen here. But if you will also notice, our title for the game and our button here got much larger. And that's because these aren't being scaled. Those are still rendering as if our game is 1920 by 1080. So let's go ahead and fix that. So we actually need to scale everything from the font sizes to the sizes of these circles that we're drawing, everything. We need to scale all of these numbers to fit with the size of the screen. So let's go ahead and start with this font size. Again, we want to round everything just to make sure it's all smooth. Gives the nice, takes the rounding out of the browser's hands and leaves it up to our code. So let's go ahead and do this .scale times 100. That'll scale our font there. The next thing we want to do, and it's also important to note, it's not just sizes, but its positioning as well needs to be rounded. So let's go ahead and take this one. This one might be a little close, so let's go ahead and do 150 instead of 100. Because otherwise, especially on a mobile device, 100 pixels is going to be a much larger percent of the screen, and we're going to see our text down overlapping with our button otherwise. Okay, so next we've got our circle here, which is 150. And so again, we'll do math.round, this.scale times 150. Okay, now we've got our play icon. This one's got a little more involved with it, but we can go ahead and round all of these numbers here as well. And luckily, we're already using relative values for a lot of things like this.center. And so those are already adjusted to the screen size and don't need to be multiplied by the scale. So this was scale times 100. We've got 260 values, so I'd just like to point out a nice trick with Sublime Text. We can actually double click on that to highlight it, and then Command D will select the next and give us multiple cursors so that we can then simply do both at the same time. Save some keystrokes. And then again, same here, double click that one, Command D, and we'll type our value here. Okay, so we've got our icon scaled now, and we'll keep moving along. Let's go ahead and move down to Start Game now. We've got several pieces of text here that need to be scaled, and so again, we can highlight that. We can do Command D, or alternately, we can press the Command button and select this down here as well. Oh, looks like I missed that. Select R40, Command select. We've got both selected with multiple cursors, and we can now edit both at the same time. Very handy feature, one of my favorite features in Sublime Text. Okay, so these were 40. Do this.scale times 40. And again, we've got some positions here. We need to go ahead and scale those as well. So we'll go ahead and get our multiple cursors again. Again, Command D. Okay. And then we'll do the same here. This time we'll do it a little differently. Here's another handy shortcut. Command Option Control down arrow. We'll select the next line. Just like that. And if you're going to use Sublime Text or any text editor, I certainly suggest getting to know your keyboard shortcuts. It will massively improve your productivity as you program. Okay, so we've got that set up now. Rendering the rocks, we want to go ahead and change the size of these rocks. So width equals, and this one's a little differently. We want to go ahead and grab the texture's width and height. So let's again round it, always round it, and we grab rock.texture, and this is Pixie specific. So the rock is a Pixie sprite, and it's got a texture applied to it. So rock.texture.width, and we'll multiply that by the scale, and then rock.height, as you would expect, this.scale times rock.texture.height. Okay, so we've got a rock scaled. We have one thing left to do. Again, we can go ahead and jump down to it. You simply do Command R, and then we want to do explode rock. Okay, and again, with explode rock, we're currently setting the width and height to the texture. That's not going to work like we would expect. So this has already actually been scaled. So let's go ahead. We're passing in the rock, as you can see here. So let's go ahead and just take the width of the rock and the height of the rock, which have already been scaled, and then we scale them down further. And so now we've scaled all elements. Command S to save. Now let's go ahead and check it out in the browser again. Command R, and we can reload. As you can see, the text has gotten smaller. The play button has gotten smaller, and that's due to the scaling from this size of screen, which is obviously smaller than 1920 by 1080. We can go ahead and hit play. This is scaled still in the position you would expect. We'll get our rocks coming up shortly. We can click on one. As you can see, the pieces have scaled wonderfully. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check it out in the emulator as well. take a look at some of our devices. Let's go ahead. Okay, so an iPhone 6. Actually, that's a high DPI. Let's go ahead and look at let's look at an iPad. Okay, and we'll go ahead and reload that. As you can see, it has resized to fit the obviously very different aspect ratio from our main window. We can go ahead and rotate that as well. Reload it. And again, because of the pixel density ratio, we do see a few issues there, but we'll be addressing that in an upcoming lesson. We can go ahead and rescale that, and it fits a little better there. So in this lesson, we've learned how to make our game responsive, and in the upcoming lesson, we will be looking at how to use mobile-specific functions such as device orientation to improve the user experience for our players.